The strange sound in the ruins. The jungle was quiet. Too quiet. Jace moved slowly through the tall red grass, his boots sinking into the soft ground. The air smelled like rust and old fire. Broken metal lay scattered everywhere. The bones of machines from the last war. No one came here anymore, not even scavengers. It was called the Silent Zone. But Jace had no choice. He needed power cells, wires, and scrap. Anything he could sell to get food. His shelter's heater was failing, and nights were getting colder. He adjusted his bag and walked deeper. Ruined ships leaned against each other like tired giants. Vines crawled over them, hiding sharp edges and old bloodstains. Then he heard it. A sound. Soft at first, like breathing, but not human. Jace froze. The noise came again. It was coming from inside an old cargo pod, half buried under metal and vines. Something was inside. Something alive. Most would have run. The stories said beasts lived here. Alien predators left behind by their masters. Wild, deadly things. But Jace was not like most people. He stepped closer. He reached out and pulled. The metal door open with both hands. It groaned, heavy with age. Inside in the darkness, two yellow eyes stared back at him. Jace didn't move. The creature was small, curled in the corner, covered in dirt and scars. It looked like a predator cub. Reptilian skin, sharp claws, and strange armor-like plates down its back. Even young, it looked dangerous. The cub growled. Jace raised his hand slowly. Easy, he whispered. The cub didn't attack. It just stared. Its breathing was shaky. It was weak. Jace looked around. Old bones were scattered in the pod. Some fresh, some very old. This cub had been surviving alone. "How long have you been here?" he said softly, not expecting an answer. He took off his water pouch and placed it gently on the ground near the cub. The cub stared at it. Then, carefully, it crawled forward and began to drink. Jace watched every move. One wrong step and he could be dead. But something in those eyes didn't look wild. It looked scared. When the water was gone, the cub looked up at him. "You're not a monster," Jace whispered. "You're just alone." He reached into his bag and pulled out a strip of dried meat. The cub sniffed the air, then snatched it from his hand with surprising speed. It didn't growl. It didn't bite. Jace sat down slowly on the floor of the ruined pod just a few feet away. The silence returned, but it felt different now. For a long time, neither moved. The cub lay back down, this time facing him. It closed its eyes but didn't turn away. Jace looked at the stars through the cracks above them. "You've seen war, haven't you?" he said quietly. "Me too." He didn't know why he was talking. Maybe because it felt like this creature understood him. Maybe because he hadn't spoken to anyone in days. He looked at the cub again. "I can't leave you here. You won't survive much longer." The cub opened its eyes at his voice. There was no anger in them, just pain, and something else. Trust. Jace stood up and took a slow step forward. "I'm not going to hurt you." He wrapped a blanket from his bag and gently held it open. The cub hesitated. Then, after a long pause, it stepped forward and walked into his arms. Jace's heart beat fast as he held the creature close. It was heavier than it looked. Its breathing was rough. It needed care. He looked back at the pod one last time, then began the long walk back to his shelter. As he walked, he spoke again. "I think I'll call you Voro." The cub made a soft sound in reply. Not a growl this time. More like a hum. And somewhere far away in the stars above, a signal pinged inside an Imperial ship. The Empress's lost pet had just awakened. The villagers panic. The sun had not fully risen when Jace returned to the edge of the village, his arms tired from the weight of the creature wrapped in his blanket. The cub, Voro, was quiet, but Jace could feel the tension in its muscles. It was scared, and it had every reason to be. This place was not kind to outsiders. even less to things that looked like monsters. As he walked through the narrow path between old huts, a few early risers saw him. Their eyes fell on the sharp claws peeking from the edge of the blanket, then on the tail. They froze. One woman screamed. "Beast!" someone shouted. "He's brought a beast!" Within minutes, a crowd began to gather. Angry voices echoed through the village. Old men with shaking hands pointed at Jace. Mothers grabbed their children and ran inside. "You're cursed," one man yelled. "That thing is a killer." "It's a child," Jace said firmly. "Look at it, it's hurt." "It's not one of us," shouted another. "It's one of them, the Empire's weapons." "I found it dying," Jace said. "Alone, scared. Just like we all were after the war." The cub stirred in his arms. Sensing the fear, its eyes opened. It growled low, not loud, not angry, more like a warning. People stepped back. One young boy threw a rock. It hit Jace's shoulder. He didn't flinch. "Don't make him fear you," Jace said quietly. "He's already had enough fear for one life." A woman stepped forward, older than the rest, with silver marks across her face. She was the healer. Her voice was calm. "Jace, if you bring this thing into the village, it will bring death. Not just to you, to all of us. Do you understand what you're holding?" He nodded. "I do. And I'm still not putting him down." For a moment, silence. Then the crowd parted. No one moved closer, but they stopped shouting. Jace kept walking. He reached his shelter, a half-buried shipwreck outside the village walls, and closed the metal door behind him. He placed Voro on a soft cloth bed and sat down beside him. His hands were shaking now. "We're safe, for now." But he knew that wasn't true. The crowd wasn't done. By nightfall, a knock came. It wasn't angry this time. It was quiet. Jace opened the door to find the healer standing alone. "May I see it?" she asked. He let her in. Voro raised his head but didn't growl. He looked tired. The healer knelt beside him and placed 2 fingers on his neck. She closed her eyes. "His heartbeat is weak," she said. "He's sick, very sick." Jace nodded. "He's been surviving on bones and dirt, maybe scraps from dead soldiers." She opened her pouch and pulled out 2 blue vials. "This will help. It's not much, but it'll lower his fever." Jace took them, surprised. "Why help me?" The healer looked into his eyes. "Because I remember the war. I remember what the Empire did, but I also remember what they took. They made beasts out of children. This one was just a baby when they trained him." She stood and walked to the door. "If the others come, I won't be able to stop them. But if you're right, if this thing is more than a weapon, you better prove it fast." After she left, Jace gave Voro the medicine. The cub licked it slowly, eyes closing soon after. For the first time, he slept without twitching. No growls, no nightmare sounds. Outside, the wind howled. But inside the broken ship, something warm began to grow. The next morning, Jace took a risk. He opened the door and stepped outside with Voro walking beside him. Voro had grown stronger overnight. His steps were slow but steady, his head lowered. No growling, just curiosity. They walked to the village square. The crowd gathered again, but this time Jace didn't speak. He sat down on the stone platform, laid out food, and let Voro sit beside him like any other pet. A child came forward, slowly, the same one who had thrown the rock. Voro looked at him, silent. The child reached out. Jace tensed, but Voro didn't move. He just looked, his yellow eyes calm. The child touched his snout and whispered, "He's warm." The crowd gasped, but no one moved to stop it. Jace looked at them all. "He's not a threat," he said. "He's a choice. We can treat him like an enemy, or like something new." And somewhere in the sky, above the clouds, a scanner beeped. An Imperial ship had picked up a pulse. The Empress's lost predator had been found. A test of trust. The nights were colder now. Jace could feel it in his bones as he lay beside the old fire barrel, watching the flames flicker against the metal walls of his shelter. Beside him, curled tightly in a nest of thick cloth, Voro breathed, in slow, heavy waves. But something wasn't right. Voro was shivering. Again. Jace leaned forward and touched the cub's forehead. It was burning hot. He sat up straight. "Not again," he whispered. The cub's body was burning up and its tail twitched weakly. For days, Voro had been quieter than usual, not eating much, not exploring, not growling. Jace had seen fevers before, in soldiers, in kids. But this was different. It was like the sickness was inside his bones, eating him from within. Jace jumped to his feet and grabbed his bag. He threw in the last of his credits, a short knife and 2 energy cells. He knew where he had to go. The black market sat on the edge of a broken crater, guarded by old war drones and angry traders. It was a place where mercy had no value, only trade did. As he walked through the gates, eyes followed him. "Human," someone growled. "You're far from home." "I need blue root," Jace said firmly. "And Thyre sap, now." A thin alien, with green eyes, laughed. "Expensive, rare, what's dying?" "A life that matters," Jace answered. The trader narrowed his eyes. "Then you'll need to pay more than just credits." Jace placed the energy cells on the counter. The trader picked them up, weighed them, then nodded once. "Wait here." But as Jace stood waiting, 2 more aliens stepped behind him. Tall, armored. "You're the one with the beast, aren't you?" one of them asked coldly. Jace didn't answer. "You brought a predator cub into a peaceful village. You should have left it to rot. And you should mind your own business," Jace said quietly. The alien stepped closer. "Give us the cub. We'll turn it in for the reward. The Empire's offering a fortune." "No," Jace replied. He moved fast. The knife flashed. Not to kill, just to buy time. He kicked a table, sent crates crashing, and bolted through the back alley. Blaster fire screamed past his shoulder. He didn't stop. He ran all the way back. To the village, lungs burning, legs shaking. When he reached his shelter, the door was slightly open. His heart dropped. He ran inside. Voro was still there. But worse now. He was twitching, his mouth foaming, eyes half closed. His body jerked like it was fighting something deep inside. "I'm here," Jace said, dropping to his knees. "I've got you." He mixed the blue root and the sap, just like the healer had taught him. He lifted the cub's head and poured it in little by little. Voro coughed, then stilled. Minutes passed. Hours. Jace didn't sleep. He sat with his back against the wall, one hand resting on the cub's side. Sometime near dawn, the shaking stopped. Voro opened one eye. Jace let out a long breath, full of emotion. "You're not going anywhere," he whispered. "Not while I'm here." The cub licked his hand, and the first time he had ever done that. That tiny gesture broke something inside Jace. For the first time in years, he cried, not out of pain, but out of hope. Voro slowly stood up and pressed his head against Jace's chest, his tail wrapped around Jace's arm. This was no longer just survival. This was trust. But outside, trouble was growing. Villagers had started whispering again. They heard about the black market fight, about how Jace had pulled a blade to save a beast. They were scared. A group of them met in secret. "He's putting us all at risk," one said. "The Empire will come. They'll follow the signal. We should take the cub and end it before it's too late." "Kill it now," another whispered, "before it kills us." But no one noticed the healer listening in the shadows. She said, "Nothing." But when the night came, she slipped away toward the Empire's listening tower outside the valley. And high above, a transmission signal sparked. The coordinates were sent, and the Empress received them. Her eyes widened. "Bring me the one who holds him," she said. "Alive." Danger from the stars above the village, blinked strangely that night. Jace stood outside his shelter, sharpening a long piece of metal into a blade. His hands worked slowly, but his eyes kept drifting to the sky. He felt it. Something was coming. Inside, Voro slept peacefully. His fever had passed. His strength was returning. He had begun eating again, even playfully chasing a small light. Jace reflected with a broken mirror. His tail had weight now. His growls were softer, but Jace could not rest. He had heard whispers, footsteps near the edge of the village. A conversation, cut off when he walked by. The way people avoided his gaze now, not out of fear but out of guilt. Someone had talked. He didn't know who. Maybe one of the traders. Maybe someone in the village who saw the cub as a curse. But Jace knew. The signal had gone out. And the Empire never ignored a signal. By the third day, strange clouds appeared in the sky. They glowed green at the edges. Birds stopped flying. Machines refused to start. Then came the sound. Deep, slow thunder that rolled without lightning. Everyone in the village stepped out of their homes and stared upward. A ship was descending. It didn't roar like old warcraft. It hummed like death. Sleek. Black. Shaped like a blade. Imperial Scout class. No markings. No warning. It landed in the open field just beyond the outer wall, crushing old rocks beneath its weight. The ground shook. Dust exploded into the air. Then silence. A door opened. Out stepped 5 figures. Tall, armored, weapons glowing on their backs. Their faces were hidden behind helmets shaped like predator skulls. The villagers watched in frozen fear. One stepped forward and spoke through a translator. "We are here for what was taken." No one answered. A weapon, lost during the last cycle. Bred for war. Stolen from Her Highness the Empress. Jace stepped forward before anyone else could speak. "No one stole anything," he said calmly. "I found a dying creature and saved its life." The scout tilted its head. "That dying creature belongs to the throne. It carries Imperial blood. Its name is classified. Its location was hidden." "Then maybe it was hiding for a reason." The scout stepped closer. "You are a human. Your kind has no place in Empire business. Surrender the beast or be removed." Jace took a deep breath. "I won't hand him over." Behind him, the villagers gasped. The scout raised a hand, signaling to the others. Weapons powered up. But before, a shot could be fired. A new sound. A second ship. Larger. Darker. Like a moving shadow. It didn't land. It hovered just above the field, blowing wind and light across the village. Its shape was unmistakable. Curved like a crown. Marked with silver lines that pulsed with royal energy. The Imperial flagship, and from its open ramp. She descended. The Empress. Tall. Graceful. Armor carved from the bones of extinct stars. Her face was hidden behind a living veil that shifted like smoke. Behind her walked 2 guards in silence. The scouts fell to one knee instantly. Jace didn't move. She walked to him. Slowly. Directly, when she reached him, the veil pulled back slightly. Not all the way. Just enough for her eyes to be seen, eyes glowing like suns. "Where is the cub?" she asked. Jace didn't answer. She took a single step closer. "I felt his breath the moment he woke. I felt his pain when he burned. I felt his joy when he trusted you." That made Jace blink. "What? Are you?" "I am his creator, his keeper. And now, I must judge what he has become." Before Jace could speak, Voro stepped outside. Not afraid. Not growling. He stood beside Jace, head low, tail still. His eyes locked on the Empress. She looked at him, then whispered one word. "Voro." The cub made a soft sound. Not a growl. Not a whimper. Recognition. The Empress fell to one knee, armor creaking. She extended her hand, but Voro didn't move. He looked up at Jace, then took a step closer to him instead. Everyone went silent. Even the wind stopped. The Empress rose slowly. "He has chosen," she said. Jace stared at her, unsure what she meant. "He was designed to follow only royal command," she explained. "But now, he chooses you." She turned to her guards. "No one harms the human. Or the cub, one of the scouts protested, but I said no one. And just like that, everything changed. In the shadows, others watched. Not from the Empire, not from the village, but from far stars. Rival worlds. Species who feared the Empire's beasts. Now they whispered, "If a predator can love a human, what else is possible?" Betrayal and the Empress's wrath for the next 3 days. The village stood on edge. Imperial soldiers kept watch near the fields. No weapons drawn, but their presence was heavy, like a storm waiting to break. The Empress's ship hovered above, silent and dark. It never left. It never spoke. But its shadow covered everything. Inside his shelter, Jace sat beside Voro, who was now walking strong, eating well, and even playing with broken parts Jace gave him as toys. Voro had changed. He was faster, smarter. When he looked at Jace, it wasn't like a pet looks at its owner. It was like a soldier watches his commander, full of trust, loyalty, and something more. Love. Jace spoke softly to him. "They don't understand you, but I do. I've seen what's in you." Voro purred, a low sound that echoed like a small engine. But peace never lasted long in places like this. On the 4th night, a fire broke out near the water tanks. While the villagers ran to stop it, 2 strangers slipped past them, wearing old scout gear and Imperial tech. They weren't from the Empress's crew. They had come for one reason. Inside the shelter, Jace felt something shift. The air went still. The metal floor vibrated once, faint but real. He reached for his blade. Then the door exploded inward. A stun bolt hit Jace in the chest, throwing him back. He crashed against the wall, breath stolen from his lungs. Everything blurred. Voro snarled and leapt, claws flashing. One attacker grabbed a metal net launcher. But he was too slow. Voro was faster than any beast they had trained before. His jaws clamped down on the first intruder's arm. Bones cracked. The man screamed. The second fired a dart into Voro's side. The cub staggered but kept moving, driven by something stronger than pain. Loyalty. Jace tried to stand. Blood ran down his side. He saw the symbol on the attacker's armor. It wasn't Imperial, it was something older, something worse. Slave hunters, Jace whispered. The kind that stole living weapons. Sold them across the galaxy. They didn't care for empires or oaths, and only golden war. Voro took another dart. He fell, but he crawled toward Jace, eyes still glowing. "No," Jace shouted. He threw a wrench at the last attacker, hitting him in the head. The man fell, but not before he fired one more bolt. This time into Jace's leg. Darkness took them both. Hours passed. Then came silence. Then came boots. The Empress entered the ruined shelter alone. No guards, no noise. She stood over the wreckage, her hands trembling. Voro lay still. Jace lay beside him. For a moment she said nothing. Then she placed one hand over the cub's heart. Her armor pulsed. A soft light spread into his body. Voro stirred. Barely. She whispered, "I should have never let you go. But now, I understand." She turned to Jace, still unconscious. She knelt beside him, and she, the most feared ruler in 5-star systems, placed her hand over a human's chest and closed her eyes. "You were not made to lead armies," she said softly. "But you led him." When Jace woke up, he was no longer in his shelter. He was in a chamber filled with golden light. Machines hummed around him. Floating medbots scanned his wounds. He sat up fast. "Voro," he gasped. A low growl came from the side. The cub stood, on a platform surrounded by healers, stronger than ever, taller. His plates now shone like black glass, his eyes bright and alert. Jace tried to stand, but a voice stopped him. "He is safe, and so are you." The Empress stood in the doorway. Her helmet was gone. Her face was clear now, pale silver skin, long lines across her cheeks like lightning. "You were attacked by slavers," she said coldly. "Traitors. From outside the Empire. Why? Jace asked. Because word is spreading, she answered. About a cub who follows a human. About a human who defied the Empire and lived. She stepped closer. You don't understand what you've started. Jace looked at her, tired but firm. I didn't start anything. I just saved a life. The Empress gave a small nod. That is exactly what they fear. Outside the healing ship, Imperial flags were lowered, and across the galaxy, new messages traveled through the dark channels of the void. The beast is no longer theirs. He has bonded with a human, and the Empress allowed it. The balance of power was shifting, and it all began with a broken boy and a lost cub. A moment that silences everyone. The chamber doors slid open with a sound like a breath being held. Jace stepped into the Imperial Grand Hall for the first time, limping slightly but standing tall. His clothes were clean, his wounds healing, but his heart felt heavier than ever. Beside him, Voro walked like a prince, silent, graceful, and alert. His body had grown stronger after healing. The black armor on his back looked polished. His eyes now reflected more than instinct. They held intelligence, choice, and something dangerously close to pride. Hundreds of nobles lined the golden walkways above them. Alien leaders, soldiers, ambassadors, all had gathered to witness the Empress's decision. The air was thick with tension. Jace could feel every stare like a blade. A voice echoed from above. Human Jace of the Outer Zones, you are summoned to stand before the crown for judgment. Jace said nothing. He kept walking until he stood before the Empress, who sat upon a throne carved from ancient starstone, her armor shimmering like a second skin. She stood up slowly. Her voice was calm, but it cut through the room like ice. You brought home what was thought lost forever, but you did more than that. She looked down at Voro, who sat beside Jace, tail resting on his foot. You changed him. Murmurs filled the hall. One noble spoke loudly. The beast should be returned to training. It is a weapon. Another added, if a human can tame it, what's to stop others from trying the same? What if he turns against us? Another barked, what if he already has? Jace turned and faced them. He's not a weapon, Jace said firmly. You made him that, but he's more than what you built. One alien general stood. You are not one of us. You don't get to tell the Empire what our beasts are. Jace stepped forward. I didn't tell him anything, he said. He chose me, not because I trained him, not because I'm strong, but because when he was dying I stayed. The room fell into silence. Jace looked at the Empress. If you want to take him back, go ahead. But know this, you're not just taking a beast. You're taking someone who finally learned what peace feels like. He turned to walk away. Voro rose and followed him. But before they reached the door, the Empress raised her hand. Wait. Her voice was soft now. Different. You're right. Everyone turned to her in shock. She walked down the steps of her throne and stood beside Jace. When we created Voro, we wanted a weapon, something loyal only to us, something that would fear nothing and feel nothing. She looked at Voro. But when he bonded with you, he began to feel, and for the first time, he chose. The Empress knelt. The entire room gasped. You saved something we had lost long ago, not just him, but our future. She stood and faced the crowd. This human raised a predator not with fear, but with care. This is not weakness. This is evolution. Outside the palace, thousands of Empire citizens watched the speech through floating displays. Some cheered, some stood frozen. In rival systems, commanders and rulers tightened their grips on weapons. They whispered to each other, if humans can reach the Empire's deadliest creatures, what can't they reach? Jace didn't understand what would come next. He didn't care for power, for titles. He only cared about the creature who had crawled into his arms that day in the ruins. Broken, scared, unloved, and now, standing like a king beside him. Voro let out a low hum. Not a growl, not a warning. It was a signal. Jace knelt and hugged him. You're not alone anymore. And somewhere in the deepest parts of the galaxy, others heard the story. And they didn't laugh. They listened. Because the Empire's war beast had chosen peace. And the human who gave him that had changed history. The cub who chose peace weeks passed, but the world would never be the same. News of the human who tamed the Empress's beast spread beyond the Empire's borders. Not just as a story, but as a warning. Or to some, a prophecy. Voro was no longer seen as a weapon. He had become a symbol. Some called him the cub of peace. Others the beast who bent for love. But no one could deny what he represented now, the impossible bond between fear and compassion. Jace didn't return to the village. He and Voro were moved to a remote moon, one covered in green hills, waterfalls, and silence. It was offered to him by the Empress herself. A place where no one will chase you, she said. A home where he can live, not as a tool, but as himself. Jace accepted, but only under one condition. No guards, no towers, just freedom. She agreed, but freedom never lives quietly for long. While Jace built a new shelter and Voro hunted peacefully in the woods, others were watching. From the deep zones beyond the rim, ships gathered, rival factions, old enemies of the Empire, slaver, groups, pirate lords, mercenary kings. To them, Voro was not a symbol of peace. He was proof that the Empire could be touched. Its greatest weapons could be taken. If a human can break the bond, one of them said, so can we. Imagine a whole army of these beasts, trained by us. A fleet was launched. Silent, without warning. Their mission, take Voro alive. Kill the human if needed. The night was quiet when the sky lit up. Jace looked up from the fire pit and saw lights falling through the clouds. Ships. Fast. Dark. Voro rose from his resting place. His body shifted. His old instincts still lived deep inside. But he didn't snarl. He waited. Jace stood beside him, holding nothing but a flare gun. We're not running. The first ship landed hard, flattening the grass. Soldiers jumped. Out-armored and armed, a voice shouted, "Step away from the beast now!" Voro stepped in front of Jace. The soldier raised his weapon, but stopped, not because of fear, but because something else rose behind the trees. Dozens of creatures, not soldiers, not machines. Other beasts, abandoned cubs, failures from old labs, creatures like Voro, but broken, scarred, silent. They had come. They had felt Voro's presence through the old bond, through the old network of minds the Empire once used to control them, but now they were free and they came not to fight but to protect. Voro let out a low growl, not of anger, but of command, and every creature answered. The invading soldiers stood frozen. No one fired, because in that moment, they understood. They were not facing one beast. They were facing a family. The invaders left. No blood was spilled. The story spread even faster this time. That a single cub, raised by a lone human, had become more than a weapon. He had become a leader, a bridge between past pain and future hope. Months later, the Empress stood once again before Jace, but not as a ruler, as a guest. She looked at the creatures living freely around the valley. We created them to obey, she said, but they follow you by choice. I never wanted that, Jace said quietly. I just wanted him to live. The Empress looked at Voro, who now stood taller than Jace's chest, with sharp eyes and calm breath. You gave him more than life. You gave him direction. She placed a small orb in Jace's hand. If ever the stars grow dark again, call, and she left. Years passed. Jace stayed on that moon, raising orphaned creatures, teaching them kindness, care, and freedom. Voro became a legend. Some say he stopped wars with a single roar. Some say he saved an entire race from extinction. But Jace never told the stories because for him the only story that mattered was this. Once in the ruins of war, a human found a dying beast. And instead of running, he reached out, and the galaxy would never forget it.